My wife and I lived in an old house in NJ. Weird things started happening. First, the sound on the TV would randomly get louder. When I tried to turn it down, it would just get louder on its own. Then, a little basketball toy popped out of a champagne glass that it was in. Then a 2-liter Coke bottle popped off the drain rack and rolled 10 feet to me. Tried redoing that rolling, never could. The biggest thing that happened. Wife and I were in our dining room looking into the kitchen. I noticed that the clock on my stove suddenly started flashing different numbers over and over. It had never happened before or since. While I was contemplating this, suddenly a bookshelf that had been standing for years toppled over. Violently, books went flying and the bookshelf was destroyed. Also, I had a nurse changing a wound on leg. I was crying out in pain when suddenly the dishes in the dish rack fell to the floor. The nurse, obviously a religious woman, shouted, "Ay Dios mío," and left, never to return. Lots more little things like that.
Not me, but my wife told me her accounts once. She lived in a trailer with her ex-husband in Perryville, KY, home of one of the bloodiest battles in the Civil War, and said it was haunted. She said that her ex-husband worked third shift, so she would be at home alone with the kids at night. And about 2 weeks after moving in, she noticed someone standing in the hallway in a gray outfit. She said that it looked like an older gentleman, and he would just stand there and look at her, and then disappear. This would happen almost every night, but she didn't do much about it because it wasn't hurting anything. Until one night she was laying in bed watching TV, and this guy appeared at the end of her bed and started shaking it. That night she packed the kids up and left and never looked back. When she was telling me the story, she had no idea what kind of clothes he was wearing. So I pulled up what Confederate soldiers' outfits looked like, and she became pale and big-eyed and said that's what he was wearing.
Got a true one here. My family used to own an old house in the south of France, in Lalbenque to be specific. Big house, 3 floors, like 12 rooms or something. I was 10 when we did a vacation there with 2 befriended families with kids and my grandmother. In the morning, we always met in the garden and did breakfast together and planned the day, etc. One morning, we sit at breakfast and one pair of parents is very quiet until they want to tell us something. They said the following: "We went into bed and read some book before sleep as suddenly a woman in a white dress, I know, pretty classic, spawned on one side of the room and walked to the other side of the room, just disappearing. Everybody was quiet. We were 13 people as my grandmother told us to wait because she wants to get something out of the house. A few moments later, she came back with a movie prep quality old photo and handed it to the pair, asking if it was that woman. Yes, it was. It was the first wife of my grandfather, and he cheated on her. She locked herself in that room and hanged herself there. Needless to say that we were all completely shook for the rest of the vacation, and they went into another room after this. True story. And the reason why I know that there is more than we know.
My brother and I grew up in a 2-story home, one that my dad built in the early 90s. So no creepy history or anything like that. One morning when I was about 10, I was hurrying to grab my things and get out the door to school when I saw my brother slowly coming up from downstairs. Where our bedrooms were, it was pretty much a basement. He stopped on the landing before the last few stairs and just smiled as he stared at me, completely motionless. It struck me as a bit odd, the expression on his face, but all I could do is panic that we were going to be late for school. I called out to him, "What are you doing? We're going to be late. Hurry up." Nothing. He just continued to smile and stare at me. So with more urgency this time, I called out, "Hey, hurry up! We're going to be late!" Then, the back door flies open and there stands my brother as he calls out to me, "What are you doing? Hurry up! We're going to be late!" I looked back at the stairs and my brother was gone. I grabbed my backpack and ran out of that house so fast. I don't know why it would have been haunted, but I was always so scared there growing up. Heard my name called, friends refused to stay the night, felt something walking on my legs as I laid in bed. I can't tell you how many nights I cried myself to sleep. I was so scared. My parents still live there, and strange, creepy things happen to this day. It's made believers out of my very skeptical brother and father, and my poor mom still gets quite scared at times.
My parents' house is old, like built in the 1790s. It's been a few things over the years, from private home to boarding house for railroad workers to funeral home, back to private home. There's been a plethora of things we've experienced growing up there. Footsteps when no one else is home, cold spots, things disappearing and reappearing in different places, shadowy figures at the corner of your eye, orbs, and full-body apparitions. The weirdest thing is the voices. Myself and my parents had heard voices coming from the other room or downstairs. Late at night, early in the morning, and can clearly make out conversations. Sometimes it's our own voices, sometimes it's other relatives, Sometimes we can't identify who the voices are, but it's clear enough that we can make out conversation snippets. I've heard my own voice and laugh, which is a tad unnerving when you wake up out of a sound sleep at 3 a.m. Even visiting friends and my wife have experienced this. And the other stuff, it's never felt threatening or malevolent, just a tad unnerving.
A lot of weird things happened in the house I grew up in, and it seemed to center around my room, the bedroom down the hall, and the kitchen. We'd often see a person-shaped cloud of smoke in those rooms, and things would randomly fall off of shelves, or my collection of music boxes would randomly play. There was also one night when I went to get a glass of water, and the cup kept sliding away when I went to pour it from the pitcher. It went back and forth a few times until I told it to stop, and then the cup slid back over to me, and that was that. I think I actually saw its true form on one occasion. I was in the tub, and I kept seeing a bearded man peeking at me around the doorway, like he was leaning in. My parents blew it off, but then admitted years later, long after we had moved, that they thought there was a ghost in the house.